What's going on, everyone? I have got my buddy and somewhat mentor and just an all-around good dude, Jay Vallotton, on the podcast. I've talked with Jay before on podcasts and had a huge response, a positive response, the first podcast that we did, which I did not think would go very well, and it went really well. So I truly appreciate you coming back on.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Yeah, it's great to be with you. I always look forward to my conversations with you. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody that hasn't listened in before a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah. So, I've been a pastor for 20 years. And mostly a lot of what I do is I oversee our emotional health departments here at the church. And, I've been literally counseling, helping addicts for a long time, lots of marriage counseling. I run a therapy center. So, we have probably 40 or 50 clinicians, therapists, counselors, so I oversee that. And then I oversee the men's ministry here at the church as well. And then I have I run a nonprofit. It's called Braveco. And basically all it's geared towards is discipling men and helping men, build lives that they're proud of. So that's my world. It's what I do all the time. As well, I have 5 kids. So, my oldest is 25 and my youngest is 2. So I've been raising kids forever and I just love it, man. Love what I do. I love the outdoors. So I do a lot of hunting as well. I had a big hunt here in Alaska this year. I shot a bull moose at 5 yards with my bow, and a good friend of mine, Pat Donaldson, up there. Him and I hunt a lot in Alaska, and just been blessed to live a life where I get to help people and enjoy the outdoors. So it's a good life.
Yeah. No. Heck yeah. After the first podcast we had done, the amount of people that had kind of contacted me appreciating the conversation that we had and also kind of throwing it out there that, we all have problems and kind of making light of the situation with dudes, because dudes really have a problem with opening up and communicating. And I can't remember, you had talked about, getting a bunch of group together of guys and like reading a book. And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't think I can do it. But I mean, I will say, like, it is, when I've recently talked to several people, about like the mental health thing and what they've done, how, combating it and things like that, because, there's ups and downs in life for everyone. And, recently I've definitely had harder times, and, it was one of those things where it definitely urged me or pushed me, along with a few other things, to go to church. And with the church thing, which is kind of one of the first things I want to talk about, when I had lost my faith, basically I had a friend die of a brain tumor, and it didn't make sense to me, and short version, that kind of crushed it. So going to church really reminded me of going to the gym. And when I say that, when you're new to it, you're kind of timid to go to the gym. You don't know which one to go to. You don't know how to use the machines. You don't really want to look stupid, and you probably don't really understand what to do. And that's probably not a great way to explain it, but for me, it reminded me a lot of that. Like, you get the slightly overweight person that goes in the gym and they're looking around, they don't know how to use the machines. That was me in church. And I really, I had a few friends kind of encourage me and talk to me about certain things. So, like, with that, choosing the right church, why would you go, what you get out of it, what you need to look for. I would imagine you get kind of these questions asked of you every day.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, the biggest thing for me is, I think a lot of people go to church to be a good person. And that, I think that's fine. That's a fine motivation. But we have to understand that, like, when we get saved, like, we weren't the ones that cleaned ourselves up. Like God's basically saying, hey, come to me as you are, right? Come dirty, come clean, come messed up, come unable to solve your own problems, and let me love on you. Let me care for you. Let me like take on my yoke, take on my burden, and give me all of your burdens. And I would say, like in our Western culture, we've done a really poor job of making people follow rules. Like you need to do all these things in order for God to love you. But it's really interesting because it's actually the opposite. It's like, well, God already loved you. He created you. He loves you. And if you follow rules so that you'll be loved, then you're just stuck in another prison of performance. You have to perform in order to be loved. But it's actually the opposite in the kingdom. Is like when I don't do the right thing, right? Like I don't not cheat on my wife so that God will be happy with me. I don't cheat on my wife because I love my wife, because I want to care for her, because I want to. So, first when we're coming to the kingdom, like kingdom of God, we come because he loved us, because he cared for us, because he ultimately died for our sins and gave us something that we couldn't earn our own, like complete forgiveness and a life that is worth living. And so I think the reason why I go into that just a little bit, and I'm not going to preach on here or anything like that, is I think so many people, they come and they find a church, but then they just find themselves following rules instead of actually falling in love with the God who died for them, who loves them, who transforms them, who wants to actually live a life where you can have a real conversation with God and even hear him, talk back to you. So I think it's important when people find a church that they find a church that is full of life. They find a church where they don't have to perform. And again, I'm not talking about, you go to church and then you live like hell on the weekend. I'm saying like, we want to live a life of purity because of our love for God. And my dad always says this. He says, first we belong and then we behave. First, when people first get saved, they need to know that they're loved and cared for, and they need to know that they belong. And as they feel loved and cared for, then they start to go, okay, well, what's the right thing to do? How should I be living my life? How should I be making decisions? So, yeah, I think that's the most important thing, because I watch people come into a religion, and religion just becomes another prison. It becomes another whole list of things that you can and can't do. And honestly, that just gets so old. But a relationship with God is what he really wants. He really wants us to have an actual daily relationship with him, because God is very much alive. He didn't die 2,000 years ago. He didn't go hide away. He created us, and he wants to have a relationship with us. So go to a church where you can have a relationship with God.
So kind of, and I want to say something before you guys send me a ton of messages. You want to hear hunting stories? I have lots of those out there, and Jay will talk about that in a minute. But I think that people need to, the really thing with me is the amount of people getting a hold of me looking for, not salvation, looking for help, right? Looking for peace, for clarity. And so bear with us here. For those that want to hear a hunting story, just go to the next podcast if you're fine. So
we got a ton of those hunting stories as well.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I think that, for me, it was one of those decisions I had Maria and Ron, but Maria specifically, somebody that they owned North River Outfitters, where I work with up in BC, and she didn't push anything upon me. She's just a really good person and a very, person of faith. And then my doctor, Dr. Drew, my buddy Lance, buddy Kurt, had kind of, urged it, but didn't push it, if that makes any sense. And then, a few things happened where I'm like, I really need to find maybe peace and acceptance and, forgiveness for certain people and understanding. It was the church going to do that? And I was like, it can't hurt, right? See how this goes. Understanding the Bible is a whole different world. It's very complicated. four people can read one passage in the Bible and get four different takes from it. Some of them are left, certainly, in my opinion, for interpretation. I didn't really go for any of that, right? And when I say that, meaning I didn't go for understanding of the Bible. I went more for a breaking bread understanding and in a relationship with God, to find peace, right? Is the easiest way to explain it. So when people, I was definitely not the person to ask advice about going to church, and I still am not. But when people are facing hard times, I've compared like church to going to AA, right? It may be, or a CrossFit gym, honestly, right? The brotherhood, the breaking bread, the family, the relationship, whatever the reason is, right, that you choose to go. I will say you definitely may want to shop around. When I say that, there's probably 23 churches within 20 minutes of me. And that is confusing, right? Because there's Lutheran, there's a couple types of Lutheran churches. There's Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, non-denominational Christian, Seventh-day Adventist, Mormon. I'm missing some, and they double up. And when I say double up, there may be 3 Lutheran churches within 30 minutes of me, for example. So what would your advice be on that one? Because for me, I was like, okay, going to a Pentecostal church, probably not on the top of my list. Seemed a little hard line for me. Probably not going to fit in. But that's me. What would your advice be on that one? Like, just go and see what makes sense?
I'm back to I think you have to go to a place where you really resonate, with what's happening. And I think we ultimately want to be able to look at the people's lives who are leading us. And if I don't want my life to look like the guy who's preaching, then I'm definitely not going to go to that church. I've been a part of a non-denominational, would be much more on the Pentecostal side. That's how we grew up, like Pentecostal and then non-denominational. And, again, not to push I always feel like I come on here and push the boundaries of what people are comfortable with, but it's just really my life. I grew up seeing miracles, seeing people healed, with my own eyes, casting out demons. And again, I always feel bad coming on here talking about my life, but this is my life. I mean, I think for me, realizing that the stuff that's in the Bible, right? When Jesus came, he healed the sick, he raised the dead, he cast out demons. And he said to his disciples and to us, you guys are going to do greater things than what I'm going to do. And he gave us the power to do that. And that mandate hasn't stopped. And so, if you look in the Bible and you see Jesus healing people and you see the disciples healing people, then why should we not believe in that? And I really do empathize with you, Aaron, with your friend, passing away, and that being a major point of pain. And I recently, this last year, had my mother-in-law pass away of cancer, which is a massive point of pain. And there's just a ton of mystery why some people don't get healed and some people do. But it's not my responsibility to change my belief based upon what doesn't happen sometimes. I always just feel like I'm responsible to walk out the gospel to my best of the ability. And that to me means, if someone is sick, that I pray for them. If someone is oppressed, then we go after, healing the oppression. If someone's, possessed, which sounds like a crazy thing. But it's not, it happens. I have the ability to help them. And so again, I think we're talking about what church to go to. I believe the gospel. I believe that the gospel is alive. I believe that what Jesus said is real, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, I've watched legs grow 2 inches. I've watched people who have cancer, who are actually medically documented, get healed. I've watched blind eyes open, deaf ears open, literally on the spot in the moment. And I've seen thousands of people not get healed, and it's confusing and it's painful. But, and so, for me personally, that's why I say go to a place that brings you life, go to a place that brings you joy, go to a place where, the gospel is alive and you're not just following a bunch of rules, but where there's actually power. Because otherwise, if there's no power in the gospel, then you're actually just following another set of rules, which is okay. You'll see life out of that, but it won't be super empowering and full of a bunch of freedom. So, and I'll say this: like, I know Baptist churches that walk in healing, and I know Catholic churches that do, and for me, it's not one necessarily denomination. I think you have to go where there's life and where people are excited about the life that they're living and are walking out the gospel to its fullness. So, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, and again, for me, I'm not trying to, when I compared it to the gym, I've made jokes before. I go to the gym religiously, and so that's like my church, but it truly reminded me of, I went in, I had some friends that met me there. The sermon was horrible. The guy, as somebody who does public speaking, the guy was really nice, but he was very, very monotone, and he said a lot. And I'm like, man, dude, I could give you some pointers, like so, I'm sure it sounds super arrogant, but I'm like, if you're trying to captivate me, you failed. Like, this is rough, right? So I went again.
That's real, man.
Yeah, well, I went again, and there, obviously the normal pastor or whatever was up there, and that one was definitely better. But I think with what you're saying, I would rather have an ex-convict who's done some dirt, right, or had a life, or someone that's had struggles, listen to them than somebody that's been perfect their whole life. And that's just me. Because of, and I'm not, again, this is just me, because the person that has had some struggles is probably going to be able to, maybe see things maybe a little bit clearer at certain times of other people that need help, more acceptance. And again, that's just my perception of this, but, well,
I mean, you don't trust a guy that doesn't have scars, right? Like what guy that really has, the ability to teach you, hasn't first learned the lesson himself. And I don't think it's real that there's people who haven't gone through stuff. Everyone's gone through tons of stuff. Now, what I see a lot is preachers who don't actually share and talk about their story. And honestly, it's why I talk about my story so much. I mean, I believe that we should weaponize our stories, the deepest, darkest places in our lives, and I've had a hard life. I struggled with addiction really young, 10 to 16 years old, struggled with masturbation. I couldn't stop. Pornography. I got married young. My wife left me at 27 for somebody else. So, she was having an affair. So I went through being a single dad for 5 years and then got remarried, which was awesome. But, went through a nervous breakdown in 2009 and had to get on medication after I lost the use of my hands for a year and couldn't hardly walk. So I was on that medication for a really long time. Like, all those things to me, all those places where I felt weak and broken down and having to overcome addiction and all those things, like the fact that I eventually overcame those it doesn't disqualify me. It qualifies me to help people. It's what people need, right? People are so hopeless, and we're talking about these things because people are in such a hard spot. And when you talk about men and women right now, like, we're the most medicated generation that's ever walked the planet. And there's more depressed, hopeless, suicidal people on the planet today than there's ever been alive. There's 50% of all kids born right now are born without a father. The divorce rate. I mean, we could just go on and on and on, honestly, Aaron. And so when we're talking about, we started talking about going to church. It's like, people are really hurting. People are really lost. People are really broken. People's lives really suck. And if we're not willing to share our own lives, the own parts of our stories that were hard, then how are we even relevant to people? And the power of the gospel is that I was broken. I was lost. I was hurting. My life really sucked. And God came And he began to change my life from the inside out. I'm no longer an addict. I no longer look at porn. I'm no longer stuck, in addiction. My life has been rebuilt. And that's my story. I mean, my kids are doing well, and they went through, my divorce, and I remarried, and my marriage is powerful and awesome. And it's because of my partnership with God. It's because of him redeeming my life and me doing a lot of hard work to partner with him and to learn things that, I need to learn and forgive and work through pain, all those things. But I think that's the power of, if you're going to a church and you're not hearing those powerful stories of somebody's life and transformation, and then I think you need to go somewhere else, because that's the gospel. The gospel isn't rules and regulations. Gospel is, we've all been redeemed. We've overcome, and we need to be able to hear those stories and share those stories. Otherwise, there's no value in it.
No, I agree. So, I mean, with really anybody listening in, like, the easiest, like the dark times, those are the messages I get a lot. Like, hey, dude, I'm not doing well. Just need somebody to talk to. Whatever. It's like, I think once you've gotten to that point, for most men, it's really bad. Meaning, if you're not all men, but most men, it's really bad. Whether that be that you go to church and find what you're missing there, or like you had talked about like a men's group, and there's not a lot of those around, right? That may be something that you need, a shoulder to cry on, like somebody to vent to. I mean, the bottom line, whether it be church or that part of it or whatever else, like you definitely need to reach out and get help. And when I say help, meaning figure out what the hell is going on in your brain and what is causing the problem.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that we were all designed to live inside a community, and most people don't understand that a lot of why they're hurting is when we talk about and think about, like, how we were designed to live. So we were designed to grow up in a family where you feel loved and nurtured and cared for, and you're designed to come into this world without the ability to care for yourself, right? Like, no baby ever wiped his own butt, and no baby ever fed itself. So you're completely reliant upon your environment in order to instill in you that you're valuable, that you're worthy of love. And that's actually supposed to be your first inheritance, is you're supposed to grow up in a family where, your mom nurtures you and your dad, adores you and cares for you and gives you identity and plays with you and gives you challenges. But so many people are growing up in homes where they're not fully taken care of. They're growing up in overburdened homes. Like I said, 50% of all kids being born are born in a home without a dad present. And what that does is it puts so much burden on mom. There's no way that she could possibly take care of all the needs of the household and meet the needs of the kids. And even if we do have a dad present, a lot of dads are struggling with addiction. So again, it creates this environment where there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of disruption in the home. And the problem is you bond or you attune to whatever the environment is. So if you grow up in a home that's chaotic, then that becomes your inner world, right? Because children don't have the ability to regulate their own emotions. They have to do what's called co-regulation. And we do that through rocking kids. We do that through comforting them. We do that through hearing their emotions, right? Like I said, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And this morning, every morning, my 2-year-old and 4-year-old are crying. Something happens, they cry. And what do they want? They want comfort. They want to be able to share their emotions, and they want me to hear it and listen to them and love on them. And then that builds a sense of comfort and resilience, and they go on and they play. Well, if you grow up in a home where those needs aren't met, where you can't share your emotions, dad says, stop crying or go to your room, or, or he doesn't show any emotion ever, or mom's not emotionally present for you, then you learn to suppress those and you learn to shove those down. And we learned, our whole generation learned that emotions don't matter, that you have to be tough, that you got to walk it off, that you got to suck it up. And so again, they say that addiction starts in our lives when we can no longer bear being present. So addiction starts in your life when you can no longer bear being present. And for most people, that starts at a very young age because of the pain that they're in, because of the unmet needs. And so by the time you get to, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, you're already medicating with things like video games or pornography or, tobacco, and not even realize why, because kids, nobody got to choose their parents. Nobody got to choose their siblings. No one got to choose their social class or how much money you made or where you grew up. We didn't. And so a lot of people think that it's their fault. Like you think, oh man, I've made all these poor decisions and that's why I'm the way that I am. But for most people, it's not your fault. You didn't get to choose. You didn't even get to choose what food you eat. You didn't get to choose any of that stuff. I mean, you were fed something for a long time. So I like to remind men and women, like, you weren't the one that wired you. You were wired in your environment. It was supposed to be a blessing. And yet, for most people, it's a curse. They're having to unwire all these things that they learned. I mean, Aaron, if you even think about your own growing up, like, how much stuff are you having to unwire at your age? How much did that, cost you? How much pain? And so anyways, I just think it's why so many people are hurting, and we don't ever share that with anybody. We don't ever talk about it. It's not cool to talk about it. It's not tough to talk about it. And so, yeah. So when we talk about men, like, men are literally suffering. They're suffering because they are so messed up from the way they were raised. And then we're taught to shove it down and stuff it down and just to be tougher and do more reps. But yet we don't have even an understanding of how to process pain. We don't have an understanding of how to communicate about it. We don't know how to get real connection. So we chase women, and not to go on a giant rant, but I just wanted to paint the problem and why so many men are suffering. Most people are trying to heal the trauma of their past and have no idea how they got to where they're at. And so, yeah, there's tons of suffering.
Yeah. And I think that, before we move on to hunting, just a few more minutes of this, when you meet certain people, you can, and I've asked this to people just flat out before, like, hey, what got you to where you are? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, I'm not saying I have no character flaws. We'll talk about me in a minute. Let's talk about you for a second. What made you this way? And I'll list a few things, and just to talk, because these are people I care about, or, that I have a close relationship with. And the childhood is always where it goes back to. When I say childhood, all the way through, basically to where you leave the house, right? And there's long lasting effects that happen that I don't think a lot of people don't even realize for quite some time. And so whether that be that you have abandonment issues, that you have, when I say that, meaning, a lot of people, aggression issues, anger issues, whatever, those are stemmed from something from childhood generally. Yep. And I can tell you, like, my anger issues or I have a bit of a temper when pushed. Generally that temper is something from, kids, right? If I see a kid being abused or hurt, a woman, same thing, disrespect, things like that will definitely push me over the edge. Protection, things like that. Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, that's from my childhood. But then you meet somebody else that's incapable of showing any kind of, I say, compassion, love, feeling, or whatever. That didn't happen at 35. I mean, that happened early, whether they realize it or not. And it's been interesting for me as I've worked on personal growth and understanding others. It's the childhood. And, as I say that, people, good parents do their best at parenting. And that doesn't mean it's always right, but generally, most of the time when I see some major flaws in someone, including myself, you can dial it back, and it was probably not good parenting. And as I say that, I love my mom to death. That's not what I'm talking about. But
Totally.
the reality is the fix, right? What do you do to break that cycle? That's a big one. So
Yeah. Are you asking me? Sorry,
in general, what people really say, what if there's there, and yeah, I mean, I wasn't, but I think it's a good idea to do it is when you're trying to figure out what issues you have. Let's say, you're a womanizer, and what I mean, that you're going from one woman to another over and over and over. And I don't mean like 6 months to 5-year relationships. I'm talking like one to another to another to another. What's causing that? Is it you need acceptance? Does that make you feel good? And I'm not talking about you're just a flirt. I'm talking about you are sleeping with multiple women in a month.
Yeah.
What's that from?
No.
From the Jay. What caused that, Jay? Like what made you do that? Or not you? What makes someone do that?
Yeah. So I mean, I would say there's probably not just one thing, but again, like when it's pain. So you have to go, well, what's driving the pain? What's underneath the pain? Because when I sleep with, one woman after another, or when I binge alcohol, like addiction is giving up the thing that you really want for the thing that you don't want. Like nobody wants to binge alcohol. What we really want to do is we want to be a successful person. No one wants to sleep with, have a bunch of broken relationships, right? Like it sounds appealing at first, but it's only fun for a second, and then you're really miserable because you're left lonely every single time. And so that's addiction, right? I'm giving up the thing that I want for the thing that I don't really want. And so that's where someone would have to go, like, what's your story? Where did the pain start? And then what's driving it? Have you ever changed your story? And so for a lot of people who are sleeping around, I see it a lot. They are still trying to feel powerful. They're trying to feel worthy. They're trying to feel connected. Every man's asking himself, do I have what it takes? Every single man. So we're born with that question inside of us. And every woman is born with this question, am I worthy to be pursued, right? Am I beautiful? And we will answer that question however we have to. So just to make it really simple, like, do I have what it takes? If you feel insecure and you don't get that question answered when you're young, you're supposed to get that question answered first from your father, right? Doing challenges with him and working hard, and your dad, you're looking up to this hero of yours, your father, who's pouring identity into you. And honestly, my dad did such a good job with me. Like, he told me every day, like, you're special, Jay. And it wasn't that he didn't correct me. Like, I got tons of spankings. But also my dad at 15, he told me, I remember this. He said, hey, make all of your mistakes at home because you have mom and I to help you. So I'd never had to hide my past. I didn't have to hide what I did wrong. My dad was very good at accepting and loving me and pouring identity into me. He also was a businessman. So I worked really hard, worked for free. But he taught me that Vallottons work hard. That's what we do. And we help the family. And I felt like I had a lot of purpose. What my dad instilled in me was he helped me answer that question, did I have what it takes? So I didn't have to go chase a woman or chase 10 women and sleep with them in order to get that validation from a woman that I'm a powerful, strong man. I actually got that from my dad. And John Eldridge said that masculinity is not something a man is born with. It's something that's poured into him from other men. And if you were never initiated into manhood, and I'm not saying like you go through a ritual, which is great if you did, but if you never had other men run with you, welcome you into manhood, give you challenges, then a man will spend most of his life trying to initiate himself, trying to feel like he's earned it, trying to quench his insecurity and ultimately heal the pain, because it's pain driving him. And same for a woman. Why would a woman give herself up over and over and over again because she's trying to answer that question that I'm worthy to be pursued. I'm beautiful. I'm wanted. I'm valuable. You know, the three greatest needs that a woman has is to feel safe, to feel seen, and to feel known. So it's not in a woman's natural nature to want to go sleep with a bunch of guys. She'll only do it if she doesn't feel like she's worthy to be pursued, to get that. So anyway, I'm not trying to make it super complicated, but it's back to like, you got to get to the root of the issue, which is an identity issue. When we talk about addiction, it's going to go all the way back to, what do you believe about yourself? And, you know, if you've been sexually abused, that created an identity issue. You believe that you're not safe, that you're not, you know, not valuable, that there's all kinds of things that stem from that. And we could just spend hours talking about it. But yeah, addiction is giving up the thing that you really want for the thing that you don't want. And I think taking some time to, ultimately, you have to be able to talk through it. You have to be able to process through it and work through the pain and work through the triggers and change the way that you see yourself and get back to feeling powerful. So that's why I love, honestly, that's why I love guys being with other powerful men. And it's over the last, I don't know, 4 years, I've started to, that's what we do in Braveco, is we give guys a clear path to get into discipleship. And that's been so frowned upon in the past because it's looked like control and, you know, tell me all your problems while we drink coffee together or something like that. But it's not that. It's so much more about being accountable for strength and honor and integrity, but then also giving guys a real process for dealing with pain, a real process for being abused growing up, a real process for not having a dad, like actually helping men really walk through that, and women too. So yeah, that's a lot of it.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So, you know, not to, I don't want to dive into this too much longer because I do want to talk to you about a few of the hunts and stuff that you've been on. But
yeah, it's great.
You know, when people, you know, Derek Wolf was on the podcast and he had talked about some of the issues he's had and whatever else. I think the biggest thing for me and the advice that I try to give people is, one, surround yourself with people you're comfortable, confident with, that you can talk, you know, things like that. And then two, which is, you know, is hard, is finding the root of the problem, which we were just talking about, and how to at least make peace with that, of some sort, and come to a resolution. And again, I think a lot of people don't even know that where the problem probably began, until maybe they get older and get a little wiser or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but well, that's enough of that for now. Anyway, on the hunt, you said you had shot a moose this year. You also had shot a brown bear. I didn't know that. I saw it in your photo. Do you do like one big hunt a year, or try to anyway?
Yeah, you know, because I got young kids and I had young kids forever, it doesn't lend itself to doing tons and tons of big hunts. But yeah, that grizzly bear I shot in 2018 in the Alaska range, and I'd set that hunt up 10 years before. I actually set it up in 2009 or 2007, and that's when my wife left, and so I ended up postponing it, of course. And it was just a friend who, he was a guide at that time. He was guiding for another friend, and so we postponed it. And then finally in 2018, it just all worked out. And so I went up to Alaska, and man, it was so awesome. I was just in the Alaska range, and there was a hunter who came before me, and he had shot a moose with another guide that was using the camp. And then when I came in, that hunter had said that they had saw a bear on the moose kill. And so my friend Pat and I, the first day, we were just, we flew into camp and we were glassing a whole bunch, and I ended up spotting this grizzly bear up on a hillside. And this was massive, man. It was huge. And so Pat said, "Hey man, in the morning, I know that the carcass is over there somewhere. I don't know exactly where it's at. but we should we should go set up on it and just see if we can get a shot on this bear. And so, man, I don't know, Aaron, if you've ever snuck in on a carcass that you know a bear's on, but it's freaking scary.
Yeah.
Everyone acts really tough until you get into a scenario like that. Like, we just took it so slow and eventually snuck in to the carcass, and the bear was not on it. And so we didn't really know where it was at, but just kind of, set up in an area where the wind felt good. And we sat there for 3 hours and nothing happened. And so I ended up just started doing a predator call with my hand, just squeaking really loud. And I had this small bear came out, small grizzly, probably like 200 pounds. And it walked out to the moose that was buried, carcass that was buried. And then it turned and started walking straight towards me down a trail. And again, like, I'm crouched down with my bow. I'm out in the open. I'm up against a small little, I don't know, like, it's it's taller than the blueberry shrubs that's out there, but not much. And so I'm like crunched into them, and there's a small sapling on my left, probably like a 10-foot tree. And this bear is walking right down this trail that goes to my left. And I'm just like, crap. And it got probably 10 yards from me and realized something's wrong. It stood up on its hind legs and like woofed at me and snapped its teeth. And then it turned around and ran off. So honestly, that was like, I was pretty shaken up. Just like, wow, that was a crazy encounter. And right after that, this big bear stepped out of the timberline and started walking down to the carcass. And he was pissed off because that other small boar was in there. So he was woofing, snapping his teeth, and angry. And he got up on top of that moose kill, and he just kept spinning circles, snapping his teeth. And I was like, oh crap. So when he was on the carcass, I could see him really good, and he stepped off of it for a second, and I realized, like, well, just the way that the topography was, I was going to have to stand up and shoot him if he wasn't on top of that mound. And just so that listeners know, like, when a bear claims a kill, like, he buries it. So he'll literally like pile up tundra. It's like the size of a Volkswagen. It's wild. And so as soon as he stepped back up onto that kill, I drew back. I got up on my knees and I drew back. He was at 35 yards. And I held for like a minute. And then he finally turned broadside, and I shot him. My arrow went all the way through him. And he just lit up, raw, and turns, and he ran 60 yards. And literally, he literally died on the run, it was just wild. So that was an insane hunt. Then that bear was giant. I mean, he was number 36 of all time, taken with a bow for an actual grizzly bear, not a brown bear, but a grizzly bear. And so massive bear. And then on that hunt as well, I ended up shooting a moose with a rifle. I had him at 74 yards with my bow. He just needed to step out of some brush, and he winded me and turned and started running. And so I grabbed my friend's 338 and shot him. And it was it was an awesome hunt.
So with the bear first, I guess, who did you go with?
Yeah. So my friend owns Top Gun Treks. He's a great dude, and his name is Bob Jewett. My friend that I hunt with, his name is Pat Donaldson, and he was guiding for Bob. And so they just gave me the friend deal. I'm friends with both of them. So I literally just, paid for fuel and bought my tags, and these guys were awesome. And, but Pat's my friend. So he built an airplane last year, a brand new Super Cub. And so he's the guy that I go with.
Gotcha. And was that the same with the moose?
So the moose, we flew the bear out and then came back and on the same exact hunt.
Okay. I wasn't tracking that. It was the exact same hunt. Okay.
Yeah. In 2018, I shot that brown bear and then, or grizzly bear, and then shot the moose as well.
Gotcha. And then you said this year you shot another moose.
Yeah. So this year, I had planned to do a caribou moose hunt last year with my friend Pat, and we we were all ready to go. And my mother-in-law, she had been battling cancer for 2 years. Um, she just started going downhill. So my wife and I went and stayed with her for 6 weeks with our kids in South Carolina while she passed away, which was just brutal. And so I was supposed to do that caribou hunt and the moose hunt last year, and an elk hunt in Colorado. And anyways, I just canceled everything. And so last year, this year, in September, I went out and we flew way north, and it was awesome, man. My friend had rebuilt, and he had built a brand new airplane, and he's no longer guiding for anybody. So it's just friends going out there, and it was crazy. We flew into camp, and I don't know, we were seeing 15 to 20 bulls a day, which is unheard of moose hunting. It's just the spot that he has is crazy. It's so good. And the first 5 minutes of the hunt, I mean, the first day it was really rainy in the morning, so we didn't even get out of our tents till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we got out of our tent, and there's just like probably a 55-inch bull walking across the tundra. And my friends and I, dude, you want to shoot it? I'm like, bro, it's 5 minutes into a 12-day hunt. Like, I'm good. And so we just, we messed around with it, called it in and did all kinds of stuff, but just glassed for a long time. And my friend, all he really cared about was meat. So he said, man, I'm going to shoot anything that I can call to the runway. He's probably 58, 58 years old. He's a Alaska resident, and he's shot lots of moose. So for those of you that have never packed a moose out, it's freaking a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's painful. And so he was like, man, if we can call one to the runway or close to it, which the runway is just tundra. I mean, it's not like, So third day we were calling, and I could hear this bull below us, just calling back and raking, and it finally popped out of the brush. And so I snuck over and looked, and it was just a small bull. So he shot that one, and we only had to pack it like 100 yards to the airplane and hang it up and everything. But then, on day 4, we went and called where he had shot his moose, and we could hear early on, we had a small moose come out of the brush, but I didn't want to shoot him. I'm in any bull area. But we just kept calling for like, I don't know, probably 2 hours from the same spot. And we could hear 2 or 3 more bulls down in the brush. But this one in particular, he would come close and then he would go back in to like Alaska has like a lot of tundra. And then where we're at has like this is all their jungle. Like you can't, I don't know, there's like 10-yard clearings, but it's really thick. And so this bull would come to the edge, and then he'd go back in and come to the edge, and we could never see him, but we could hear him. And we could hear that he had cows down there too. So it was almost dark, and my friend Pat was like, hey, we have to go in after him. We got to like get into his bubble and get him to fight us. So I'm like, cool, let's do it. So we started into the brush, and there's probably like 20 minutes left of light, and the bull was about 30 yards on the other side of this brush patch, and we would call and rake, and he would just shred trees down there. And finally my friend looks at me and he goes, hey, do you have your pistol? I was like, oh frick, I forgot it. Like I carry a 44 mag, and it was we had been calling for so long, I just pulled it out of my chest pouch and set it on the ground. And I was like, bro, do you have yours? He's like, no, I left mine up there. So we're just two idiots, it's almost dark. So I raised my bow up, and I was like, well, I got this, we're too far in to go back. And so we just kept going, and Pat pushed through this little hole and pulled back some branches and raked one last time. And this bull like came busting out, busting through this willow tree. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but like, I don't even remember drawing. I just remember being at full draw. And the bull's 5 yards away from me. Literally, he's got his head down, and all Pat said was, "That's a good bull. You shoot it." And so the bull's looking head on. He's got palmated fronts. He's a big old bull. And I'm just thinking to myself, don't shoot him in the face, like, God dang. So he turned to his right to rake a small bush. And when he did, I put it straight on his chest and shot. I shot him straight through the chest, and he came charging straight forward. So Pat and I literally jumped out of the way into the brush, and he charged right past us and ran down the trail. And by the end, it was like dark. I mean, if he wouldn't have been at 5 yards, I wouldn't have been able to see my pin. It was dark. And so everything happened so fast. I was like, gosh, I don't know how good the shot was. I felt like I got, 3/4 penetration into him. I had a lighted knock, so that helped to see, but it was just so fast. We went down and we looked for blood, just really quick, and couldn't find any blood, and heard a bunch of crashing. But again, we're in such thick brush that we both decided it would be better to not push him and to come back in the morning. So that's what we did. We came back in the morning, and honestly only found like spots of blood for the first 20 yards and then lost it. And I started like doing these big circles through the alders looking for blood. And it's so scary, man, to not know how good you hit him. But anyways, I popped out like 20 yards past Pat on this moose trail in there, and there's just blood everywhere. So once he started spraying, it was like a fountain. And he died 60 yards. Literally, I shot him. He ran 5 seconds and died. We just didn't know. And so ended up, butchering him. And yeah, it's a big old moose, though. He's massive and big old palmated fronts. And he wasn't crazy wide. He's 57 and a half wide, which is good, respectable bull, but just massive. So that was crazy. Got my heart going. Tons of fun.
So,
yeah.
What you brought up packing moose, like, most people that haven't packed one probably are going to just push that issue one time and then realize that just shoot them by the lake or the landing strip or whatever else, because they are heavy. How long did it take you to get that thing broke down?
Yeah. The challenge was he had literally collapsed on himself. He wasn't on a side or anything. And just where he was at, he was so big that we couldn't really turn his body, and he had rigor mortis so bad. So it was just such a pain in the ass to break him down. It took about 3 hours to break him down. And because he was he was laying on one side a little bit more than the other. And so I lost like half the meat. We packed it out of there, but because you have to pack all the meat out of Alaska. But one rear leg and one front shoulder was soured. But one rear leg, like our rear leg is 130 pounds, so you get a ton of meat off of one. So it took us 3 hours to break them down. And then it takes 8 loads, to pack the moose out. And, so that was quite a haul. I had to cut out a path out of the alders, and then, walking on tundra is not the funnest either. It looks really smooth when you're flying over it, but it's like people describe it like a sponge over giant marbles, and it's pretty much what it's like. And then it can be really slippery and muddy underneath that too. But honestly, it's the pain that we all like. If you're a hunter, it's like there's nothing better than strapping a bunch of meat onto your back and suffering for a little bit and enjoying it. So I had a lot of time too. It was only day 4 and I had 12 days. So we basically packed that moose out, got it to the airplane, hung it, and then the next day he started flying loads back to a small village to then take it on a bigger cargo plane to Wasilla, where he lives.
Yeah, no, the moose thing is definitely it'll test you at times, depending upon not just the when they die like you've talked about, or they'll die in a river or a creek. It definitely
oh my gosh,
long drawn out day, to a point. I actually leave BC before moose season starts because I don't want to mess with them guiding wise. It's just, I do the sheep goat thing and get out of there. But,
Yeah.
well, you got anything else planned for, well, I say this year, this year's almost over, but what's your anything for 2025 yet you've got in the book?
Yeah. Yeah. So my friend Rob Wiley, I don't know if you know him, Aaron, but he's been an outfitter in Wyoming, non-typical outfitters forever. He's awesome. Really good friend of mine. He's the guy that taught me how to shoot long range, which with Braveco, we do all these long range shooting schools and stuff now. But so him and I and my friend Caleb Marmaleo, Caleb's probably one of the best photographers in the industry. He's amazing. We're going to go do a hunt in the mountain range up in Wyoming. It's supposed to be one of the hardest hunts, but we're going to go 26 miles back on horses and hunt for elk. So I've actually never shot an elk before. So that's just a bucket list thing. And Rob and I are friends, so we're just doing it as a friend hunt. And he's got a crazy story. He's an incredible man. He had a crazy childhood and crazy story. So we'll film it and share his story and, just have a great time. So I have that in the books. That's all I have in the books. I do tons of fly fishing and fishing. I've got, access to places in Texas to hunt and stuff, but usually those are like last minute bomb to Texas for a couple of days, shoot axis deer and pigs and whitetails. And so I try to do that once or twice a year, something random. And then I'll kill a lot of ducks and geese here, just locally. I live in Northern California, so there's some decent places around here to hunt. And so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I appreciate the flies that you sent, by the way. I didn't have a use for those here in Wyoming, but when I went up north, there's a lot of, I guess it would be bull trout and what else are we catching up there? Anyway, giant trout, and I definitely used the different flies you had sent me up there. I fly fish, but I don't. I'm like a 4-weight guy for yarding out. I hadn't basically since pike and muskie was the last time I'd thrown a 10-weight out. And was a little rusty. Throwing out a tiny little midge or whatever is a lot different than yarding out a giant streamer. So
it's true.
I was a little rusty at it.
Yeah, I got into fly fishing, I don't know, probably 13 years ago, and I'm just super obsessive. So once I got into it, I started tying flies and then started building fly rods and pretty much got to like the professional level of fly tying. I did it every single night for 8 or 10 years. And I don't do it a ton right now just because of the kids, as far as tying and whatever. But yeah, I love it, man. It was such a therapeutic thing for me when I was going through like tons of anxiety. Tying flies is pretty much how I coped with it. So yeah, it's great.
No, that's good. Well, dude, we're about to hit an hour, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do appreciate you, hopping on, and definitely want to say thank you for the people that have reached out to me to let you know that the podcasts we've done were very helpful. And so yeah, thanks from all of them as well.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much too. I appreciate being on here and just enjoying the honest conversation and how much you are opening up and helping people. There's not a lot of guys like you, Aaron, who are just where you're at in the hunting industry and in life and willing to share your story and open up with people. It's crucial. It's what we need, right? Like we need men that are willing to talk about some of the struggles that they're going in, that they're dealing with and facing them head on. So I have a lot of respect for you because of that. So well done.
Thank you. And if I can help, it's not easy, but the knowing that I'm helping other people is a big part of that. So yeah, definitely. Well, cool, man. Well, again, thank you for hopping on. I'm sure we'll have you on again some point in time in the next year, and definitely keep me posted with what's going on in your life, and I'll do the same.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Take it easy.
All right.